working should not be something that is frowned upon for women? And how do we encourage young women, especially that if they're going to go into male-dominated fields, sales, STEM, all of that, that you can do it. You can do it all. You can do it all.
You can. I think what I've tried to stress for folks, and I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree, you can do it all. Try not to do it all at once. Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Chrissy Falteruso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I'm really excited about our guest today. I've got Celeste Berke Knisely, who is the founder of CBK Sales, and I'm very proud to say this, she's the only certified gap selling training partner. So Celeste, welcome to our show today.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I'm really excited to tell your story. So, but before we get in, tell us who you are, what you're doing. Tell us about CBK Sales. Tell us about the gap selling training partnership that you have going on. Fill us in.
Sure. So I run my own training consulting company. The underpinning, the methodology I use is gap selling. I happen to be the only gap selling certified training partner, the current partner. So I'm in a very interesting position in that I work very closely every day with the founder. I'm also Keenan, who wrote the book, his certified seller. So I get the best of both worlds, running my own business as well as supporting a growing sales methodology. And we can chat about how on earth that came to be after a random corporate career. But that's what I'm doing today. And entrepreneurship came to me as I was forced into it. For all of you who are wondering, how do you just become an entrepreneur? So we can dive into that a little bit later.
Well, we're definitely going to get to that because it seems like a very hot topic for folks right now, because I don't know what your LinkedIn feed looks like, but my LinkedIn feed right now is riddled with people who are either at complete burnout from their corporate jobs and have decided that they need to go explore solopreneurship or entrepreneurship, something where they're doing something on their own, or you've got a ton of people who are struggling to find work, who have been laid off or displaced from their jobs and are now turning to this as an alternative to subsidize income, which makes perfect sense. So we are going to want to talk about that because I think there's a lot of people that would love to hear from somebody who's done it successfully and maybe some things that they should consider and look out for. Okay, but before we get there, I do have a personal question that I'm going to ask. With all the sales methodologies out there, how did you and why did you choose gap selling?
So I'm not ashamed to admit I spent 17 years being a BANT seller. I decided at age 27, I have to get into sales so that when I'm 30, somebody takes me seriously. That's just this mantra I had. I come up through nonprofit association management. I have a master's in tourism where my concentration was event and meeting management. Super random. I got into sales and didn't know it at the time, but everything I was taught was all about the product, about the features, about building relationships and selling on objection, selling to need. And as I left the corporate world by force, I was voluntold I was leaving as a result of a pandemic layoff. About a year into my journey, a really great friend who I'm actually recording tomorrow with, that we met on LinkedIn, and he's become a great friend in, professionally, said, I think you should read this book called Gap Selling. So I was like, all right, I'll order it. And I read it. And I had this oh crap moment of, I realized while it was often about the customer, it was really about me and my team and our goals. And this makes so much sense. It just aligns. Knowing the problems that you solve, how they show up with your customer. So that's how it came to be. Randomly, I read a book. And then about 2 months later, I thought, I'm going to apply to become a student, to become a partner, which you basically go back to school to get certified. And there I was at, age 42-ish, back in the student seat. So that's how it came to be, just by someone mentioning it to me. I never really jived with, I get, the foundations of selling, spin, Sandler, all of that, but it just spoke to me. So I guess a book can do that and change your career.
A good book
Good book.
can. A good book can. I was raised in Sandler.
Mhm.
I was exposed to Challenger. So like I definitely have different sales methodologies, which is why I had to ask. And I feel like BANT definitely came into our universe a little bit, but it was like all of the people that had come from like older school tech like
Yep.
Oracle,
IBM, sure.
Adobe,
Yep.
IBM's, yes. A little bit of those corporate sales environments. That's where I feel like I got exposure to Bant, but it was mainly Sandler and Challenger. So gap selling is not something I'm super familiar with, but you may have just inspired me to go read the book.
I will
So
send I have like we have hundreds of hard copies sitting around, so I will
then
send
Celeste, yes, I will say
or an
send me
or an
and I want you to
audible.
sign it. I want you I want you to autograph it as the
Okay.
only certified
Okay.
partner. So that way I have a special copy of the book. But no, I'm always like you. I'm an avid learner, so I love to just expose myself to new practices, especially if it's going to benefit our customers. Okay. So that helps give us a little bit of the foundation, but you know me, I'm going to start with I want to go way back because it's not good enough for me to just hear where you're at now and what you're doing. So we're going to rewind, I don't know, maybe a decade, 2, 3, 4. When you were little, as far back as you can remember, what did you actually think you were going to be? What did you want to be?
So I've had a hard time swallowing this, but I'm going to be 46 this year. So when we go way back, we're going back a lot of years. But I have this memory. I think I was always into arts and crafts and being creative. And I have this memory of seeing a billboard, and it must have been a billboard that was designed, right? Like not McDonald's or something that Arby's that had just come about when we were younger. And I thought, I want to design billboards. And I even got into Syracuse's fine arts program and I didn't go. So I spent my youth and really thinking I'm an artist. But I was like
Which you could be.
a fringe artist. I wasn't really that great. Where I became great was more of like the technical, which is why I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. But those are my earliest memories of really thinking, I want to design that. How do I go do that? Is that really a job?
I mean, everything's a job, is what I've learned. Right? Like everything that we see exists intentionally, right? There's nothing that isn't intentional out there. So there is somebody behind all of this stuff. Okay. So now that we got past this point of obviously at some point you've decided that this wasn't going to be a path. So it sounds like
It,
Syracuse, we were going to get into the program and then we decided to not.
yeah. So I got into
So take me on your journey.
Syracuse's fine art program. So I grew up in a family. There were 4 children. My father has a very successful medical practice. My mom got her PhD. She was in early childhood education. We never qualified for any assistance. I mean, not that many people do these days. And I had this moment of, I can't ask my parents to, at the time, Syracuse was $30,000. This is circa 1997, to pay for art school when I'm not really sure that's what I want to do. I had hesitation around it. So randomly, my mom and I drove to the college circuit, which seems like you're on. You go to visit colleges, you see what it's about. And I saw a sign. We were going to visit OU, Ohio University, and I saw a sign for Kent State University. And they have the second most famous fashion design and merchandising school next to FIT. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of like art adjacent merchandising. Let me do that. And that is where I started. And 4 years in, I was like, I do not want to be in merchandising. But here we are, and I have to finish it.
Well, I appreciate your commitment to the journey because I had a similar situation. I went to school for PR. I have not done PR technically at all because it took me 4 years to realize 4 years and a few internships to quickly recognize that public relations as a formal discipline was never going to be for me.
And I love this. So I was born outside of Montreal, so I have a dual citizenship. And what I thought was so awesome, especially in Quebec, is that when you graduate from high school, which is only, I think, through grade 11, you do this like 2-year junior college where you're trying to figure it out and you're taking classes. And I so wish that that was really more so this journey, because I don't know about you, but I went to college when I was 17. I was young. So my freshman year, I was 17. And I don't know many 17-year-olds that can tell you what path they want to go on. And as someone who's now looking back on my career, the iterations that I've gone through and, the twists and the turns continue to change. This is no longer, it's pretty rare to find someone who's worked at the same job or profession, or same place of employment for 30 or 50 years. So I was so far along the journey, I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to continue to go to school. I'm like, you know what, I'll graduate,
Right.
and then I guess I'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, clearly you figured it out. So, I mean, and
Still,
like to your point,
still figuring
you
it
have
out.
a late birthday, is what I'm guessing, right? Like you're either
Mhm.
September to December,
Mhm.
somewhere in
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm September, so I started school at 17. And to your point, I went in day one wanting to be an accountant. Okay. I literally cannot do basic math right now. Everything I do, I use like percentagecalculator.net
Yes.
all day, every day. My husband and daughter are brilliant math people and they just laugh at me and my inability to do things. But I went in day one thinking I'm gonna be an accountant because my mom told me I should be an accountant. And I was like,
Mm.
I was good in math in high school. I'm like, we're gonna do this. Like 2 weeks I lasted. I think I took like one 101 class. And I was like, ooh, this is not gonna happen. So, and changed my major
It
3 times.
it is difficult. I had to take 4 semesters of a language. 2 were writing intensive of French. First of all, when am I ever going to use this? Why is that still pertinent? Why was that 4 semesters of college? What, like, show me how to balance a checkbook. Show me how to do my taxes. Would have been more appropriate.
Well, see, that's what junior college should be, right? So you should have a year of schooling after high school that teaches you like basics, like life skills.
skills.
Yes. Like teach your kid how to cook, how to balance a checkbook, how to pay bills, how to change a tire. Like, I mean, like just pump gas. My kid, like, I'm like, okay, cool, you're getting your license. Like, not every place is full serve. Like basic things that you need to learn to survive. Like how to read a map. Not that you may ever need to do that, but like, I don't know, maybe. Like, what if your phone does, you don't have GPS? I don't know. I don't know. These are just
Yes.
things that I'm
How
like, you
about
may not know.
how about when my husband says to me all the time, like, babe, just go west. And I'm like, I don't know west. Is it right
Celeste,
or is
coming
it
out of a
left?
subway station when my husband goes, go northeast, I'm like, who? Am I going towards the McDonald's or am I going towards the Dwayne Reed? Like, I just like up, and he's like up or down. He's like, I don't know why you can't figure out the grid. It's a grid. No.
Yes,
No.
I'm totally in agreement on this. Let's call it a gap year even of the life skills. And I do think that's probably where the trades win. Trade schools win. They like
Yeah.
force individuals to really grow up, because now you're in a trade school where you're like learning a trade that you're going to start a business, you're going to be an apprentice,
Yep.
versus I'm living in a dorm and someone cooks all of my meals and I guess I could do my laundry. It's a padded sense of reality.
Yeah. I think we really need to advocate for this like new program that's like required. We need to make this required. Yeah.
I like it. Almost like a life
Yeah.
internship. Or
Yeah.
you're spending that first year, so my sister went back later in life. She was a PA for, I don't know, 13 years. And at age 37, she decided she was going to medical school. So she lived away from home
Wow.
for 7 years, from her husband and her 2 kids for 7 years. She'd see them one day a week because she lived like an hour away. They bought a house and then she had an apartment.
Wow.
But her rotations were, every 8 weeks or so, she was changing. If it was OB, if it was, peds, orthopedics,
Right.
so she could figure out which direction she wanted to go. And I love that. And I'm thinking, why isn't that part of the college experience, that you're doing a little bit of work with this company and now this company that's doing something else? You start to get a feel for, I like this, I don't, etc. So I don't know why we haven't revamped that to mimic real world, but still a miss.
Yeah, we got to figure that one out. But while we let some people figure that out, let's go back to your career here because I've got some questions. Obviously, your career was not linear. We've already captured that in like a few sentences from what you've described here. So we didn't have a linear career path. So kind of walk me through this. So I want you to reflect back on your career journey. Like, what were some of the big pivotal moments or the decisions that you feel like really contributed to your ascent?
My first job out of college was working for a nonprofit, and I loved it. My mom will still have conversations with me about, I think that was your most favorite role. And I think it's because I had to do a lot and we were small, shoestring budget, and I learned so much. I was a sponge. But I had this moment where I saw a freaking newspaper ad for a job, and the job was $40,000. And at the time, I made
That's a lot.
$10.50 an hour. And I thought, this is an account management job it's $40,000. Like I thought this was this like benchmark that like I had arrived. I think I
Right.
was 25.
I mean, that's a
Um,
lot of money. And I'm not going to say back then, but at that young age, kind of
yes,
back
I
then,
think my
that was
rent
a
was
lot.
like $375. I lived in the South. Um, and I was not married at age 25, so there was a lot of pressure in the South. But that was a pivotal moment of something that I felt like I kept doing, which was staying past my welcome, if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
So
Yes, it does.
staying in this place of comfort, whether that was in relationships or in jobs, because the thought of betting on myself was scary and it was unknown and I wasn't sure I could do it. And so breaking out, I still remember having that first interview. In reflection of that interview, they said, on the first interview, we thought you were going to fall asleep.
That would be me.
Like, I'm not really like a overly excitable person. I'm kind of like keep it on the inside. I still got the job. I've like warmed up afterwards, but that to me, I think was that first I can do it. I can place something out in front of me, a goal, and go for it. And the thing was, I was so freaking bored in that job because I didn't vet the job about the job and the company and what would my job be. I vetted the job on that I was going to make $40,000 and my life was going to change. So
I mean, but
don't
that's not uncommon, right? Like you aren't the
totally.
only person who
No.
made that mistake. People do it every
No.
day, right? Like they take jobs that they end up
Absolutely.
hating because a title or compensation has convinced them that this is
Yes.
it.
The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success.
I was so bored. I actually took a second job on contract, designing an event that I would work on that job's time. And also I started a master's just so I could be busy at my job because I could do it all in like 2 hours a day. And I just sat in an office by myself. I was like this lone wolf. So it was in that moment when I realized I think I need to get into sales. I'm now an account manager. I need to get into sales so that I'm taken seriously by the time I'm 30. And at that time, I was moving cross country. My older sister moved to California, and I thought, I'm going to up and change my life. And I started the process of trying to find a sales job with no sales experience. So not only did I land a director of sales job overseeing a staff of 5 people in an industry I'd never been in. I'd never sold anything. I'd never managed anybody. I couldn't tell you one acronym. I couldn't even tell you like what I was supposed to do. But I think I was so good at convincing the 7 people I interviewed that I could do this job and that they had to, I almost like gap sold them, right? Like, where are you trying to go? Why does it matter that I don't have industry experience? And what I did was find people outside of the company that could help me. So it always gave an appearance of like, yeah, absolutely, I'll work on that. And then on the side, I'm like Googling, what is that? How do I help? Calling my friends, calling a woman who took me under her wing to help me level up. And in a turn of events, 13 years later, the person that hired me, she was my regional. I hired her as a direct report 13 years later. My direct
I love
report.
that.
Isn't that funny? It was kind of awkward. Like, all right,
Listen,
yes.
I've always said that my biggest achievement could be is if somebody who ever worked for me, if I've ended up working for them.
That's
Because
awesome.
it would indicate that I got to help build something foundational for them professionally that was a catalyst to their tremendous success. So I always said, like, if it ever came to that, I would have no ego about it. I would have such pride.
And totally, we had conversations. She was in the Seattle market. I had that market about how do we learn from each other, and I
Yeah.
was in awe of her and this amazing career that she had, and I'm still learning from her. And she's like, vice versa. I learned so much from you all the time. So it really was this amazing relationship, but like how funny and random.
No,
That,
it's good that the two of you figured out like how do we make this work for ourselves and each other, because that's not always the case, right? That could have gone a very different way.
and I think it speaks to part of your audience here is I remember being that first time manager, and I remember even 5 years into managing people and having these aha moments of like, I shouldn't have said that. Um, Gosh, I made a bad hire. I hired somebody I liked, not that they were filling gaps that I,
Yeah.
as a leader, had. And how do I bring someone on my team that's going to excel in areas where I won't? And so I realized I had to lead her differently than, a brand new, a green, a first time leader.
Right.
So I ebbed and flowed out of that, but you're always learning as a leader and having to face your own, I don't know, it's okay to ask for help. So I would often ask her about things because she was very specific to like one brand she knew, and I was weak in that brand. So that was an interesting turn of events. And then I kept going, and at one point I told myself, stop taking jobs because they feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it comes down to it. I'd moved to Denver. I told myself my career in hospitality sales and leadership was over. But, when you're not getting jobs, when you're being overlooked, you tend to fall back on what you know. Well, taking that then advanced my career up into the corporate above property to where I had 19 hotels, 50 some salespeople. And so I'm thankful that I did that. But I feel like I was always not betting on myself because I was scared to put myself out there. And that I was forced to make a change. So when COVID happened, the hospitality industry, like many, was decimated.
Yeah.
My position as regional director of sales and marketing was eliminated. And it was in that moment, I remember the drive home, and I had an 11-month at home, and I was like, I have to choose. I can continue this 20-year path of taking the job that I know and it's safe and I know I'll do well, or I can bet on myself. And I sat with it for a while. I'm like, I'm going to bet on myself. And here we are,
Celeste,
5
you
years
have
later.
to tell me how did you do that? How did you convince yourself? Because I feel like so many people, and listen, myself included, I'm so risk adverse. Like I'm like, I'll dip my toe and like, no, water's cold. And I will backpedal and I stay in a safe zone. How did you get to a place where you convinced yourself that like you can bet on yourself? Like how did you do that? Because I feel like so many people play like kind of sit in this space of I don't know if I can, if I should, if the timing's right. We can come up with 1,000 excuses. How did you just land on this?
So something my dad instilled in me at a very young age is like, you save for a rainy day, and you should always have money
Mm-hmm.
set aside in case something happens. And I always did that. Even when I made 10.50 an hour, 3% here, a little bit percent here. Every time I made a bonus, it went away. So I will say that I bet on myself early enough to have a cushion that if things went south, I could survive for a few months if I had to. And so I took that money and I invested in myself. And now I'm talking, I did not come up through like we didn't come up through these AI times and these tech tools. Like if you wanted to get an app built, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
I couldn't even tell you what an email marketing program was, how to use Facebook at the time, because I was in with blinders. And so I spent that first year becoming a student again of, I'm going to take this course. I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to learn about digital marketing. I'm going to start building on LinkedIn, and just investing in myself without any outcome. And then I started to build a course, and then I got a client. And then I started to tell myself, you've got to do it because you're the only one who's going to bring in clients. Like your output and how much you're willing to go outbound is going to determine if you have money coming in.
Right.
So I think it's just, I kept up that mentality of how do I look at this to help me build a business and how do I learn? But I also made a lot of mistakes. I spent a lot of money and still have recently on, a vendor, a product that didn't work, a tech tool that you really didn't need, a course that you're like, oh, I could have written that myself.
Right.
So it's this just continuous journey. And I will tell you, on a personal level, for any of you listening, I struggle, still do, but went through a really bad time of like depression, anxiety, and very negative self-talk. And I think being an entrepreneur and this partnership agreement has forced me to not have the time to sit with those thoughts. If I have a thought like I can't do it, I have to check myself. Like, you know what? That's a thought. I won a piece of business. I did this. Look at what you've done, like what you're building, and I move on. And also being a mom. I don't have the like hours to sit around like, oh, woe is me. It's kind of like, oh, my daughter needs a snack. Now we got to go here. We got to do this. So that has been like a great checking myself is I won't let myself fail, but I've also had to redefine what success is. And it's no longer tied to a monetary. See, I told you we'd come full circle with the $40,000 job. It's no longer tied to a monetary achievement. I have to look at like all those little micro wins.
Okay. So now this is a great segue. Looking back, what are some of the things you're most proud of?
One would be 2 cross-country moves where I up and quit my job and I had nothing. I had like no plan. I had to reinvent myself and start over. And I would say a lot of people, you know, even me being really risk adverse, aren't willing to do that because you spend a lot of time in your head. You start over with no friends, no circle. It's very lonely and you have to reestablish who you are. So I'm really proud at age 26 and 33, I started my life over again. So those 2 moments. Another one would be the impact and influence I've had on dozens of people's lives. So I can recall them. I have notes from individuals. It's not something that I was like paid to do. It was they either got a job because I made an intro. They changed their life. They got out of a relationship. They realized something about themselves. Even to this day, I'll still get a moment of, you really helped me during COVID. And I don't think you know it. Like your posting on LinkedIn helped me during a really difficult time. I'm like, it did. That's amazing. And I don't do it for a like, oh, if I help you, then you get this back. It truly makes me feel good.
Selfless.
To impact them. Just yesterday, I hooked up 2 people. Oh my gosh, you guys should talk. And I know that they will probably work together. I don't get anything from that except the satisfaction of knowing I continue to leave a little imprint on people's lives. And I think to your point earlier about this podcast, it's like that legacy. What do you want people to say about when you're no longer here? What are they going to remember? And nobody's going to remember the amount of money you made, right? They're going to remember the impact that you had on them personally. So I'd say those 3 things. And having a freaking kid at age 40, this is like a really when I had to, I have
not
to
enough people
myself.
talk about this.
No.
Not enough people talk about this. And I did have someone recently reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, because I did a post about like motherhood and things like that and my career, like my career come first, whatever. Yes. And they said, you know what? I live in DC. And they're like, the amount of women having kids in their 40s right now, Christy, like through the roof. Like everyone in their 40s is pregnant. They're like, it's not too late for you. I'm like, well, you know, like my husband and I have agreed that like that ship has sailed for us, but thank you so much for validating that if I wanted to, I could, and it would be perfectly fine. So good for you though.
And I do think that is you know, there's obviously some stigma around it. I was one of 2 people in 7 years to have a child in the corporate world. So it was very ostracizing, especially when you're sitting around a table of men and like you got to pump and all of that. Traveling at 13 weeks, I started traveling and I'd have to pump and take my milk and like figure all of that out. And so I look back at those things like, heck yeah, I did that. Like, that's so freaking awesome. But I will say one of the hardest things that I've had to overcome is just what you said. I was so driven in my career. And I have to look at my daughter sometimes and say, like, you didn't take it away from me. I'm just figuring this new normal out. And I'm figuring out how to like not do as much so that I don't sacrifice time with her. And she resents me when she's older.
They won't, right? They're learning, they're watching, and if anything, we're inspiring. I think as moms, we are more sensitive to things that are not as impactful on them as we believe that they are. Like I have like little videos of my kid when I would be working. Like I always had my laptop on my lap. Like I don't remember ever not having a computer open or multiple computers open or on my phone. And my daughter had a little Leapfrog computer, like one of those Leapfrog learning computers. And we have a video of her sitting there typing on her thing, telling us that she's sending emails like me. And she's telling my husband on this video of the email that she's writing to me. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, I don't know if I should feel really sad that like she feels like she needs to email me to communicate, or if like this is really cool because I'm inspiring her and she's emulating good behavior of like empowerment and like success and like working as a woman, where it's like, I didn't really have that growing up. Right. Like my mom and dad had their own careers, which is not something that I went into. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's kind of cool.
I think as long as you're like checking in, my daughter fails all of those tests that are on a computer at school because we've just not exposed her to that. She just turned 6 last week, 2 weeks ago. She rarely gets TV time, but this morning my husband had to leave early. I was in the shower. I came down and I said, Dad said he didn't make you breakfast. What do you want? And she said, I put the order in on my phone, which she has a piece of paper that she's like, drone, has all these apps that she drew. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't have my phone with me. What was the order? Because I think she is seeing, right? Mommy, she told me today, I was just in Phoenix for 2 things. And on the walk to school, she was like, when you were on your call vacation, I'm like, well, it wasn't a vacation. But okay. So yeah, I do think it's important that we recognize that working should not be something that is frowned upon for women. And how do we encourage young women, especially that if they're going to go into male-dominated fields, sales, STEM, all of that you can do it. You can do it all. You can do it all.
You can. I think what I've tried to stress for folks, and I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree, you can do it all. Try not to do it all at once. Because I feel like that's like there is a season and a reason, and timing definitely plays a part in this. When you try to do it all at once, though, is I feel like where we put this internal pressure on ourselves to excel at all these things. Like if you want to have a kid, it's okay to step back for a little bit and focus on that for a minute and then come back and then reprioritize your career. Or if you're at a place where, health is something that you want to prioritize, it's okay. Like your life is going to have different seasons, and those different seasons you can lean into, and you're not sacrificing anything, because at the end of your journey, right, the end of your life, you will have been able to do it all.
Yes. No, totally in agreement. And I have to check myself often and ask myself, why am I doing this? Okay. So I used to write an article every single Thursday on LinkedIn, and now write an article for another, it's called Revenue Magazine. And now sometimes I miss it. And instead of staying into the night where I'm taking time away from my family, I'm just like, oh, well, I missed it. Like, I don't have to have that pressure of like, why does it matter if I don't get it out? Like other people aren't sitting around waiting for it. So I do think it's the pressure that we put on ourselves, but I'm constantly like the why, because I do agree. Like, first of all, you don't get this time back. And I will tell you this, like, this is a crappy leader, but for all you leaders listening, when I got my first corporate job, like 6-figure job, they sat me down, 2 men, and they said, we're inviting you to come onto the corporate team. So you have like corporate oversight. Oh, we could have lowballed you and like not giving you the 6-figure job, but we feel like that's like a benchmark. And I said, great. Cause I just like wanted to keep climbing the ladder. I said, but my grandmother turns 90 and I'm headed home next week. They wanted me to start immediately. I'm headed home next week to celebrate. And one of them said, a VP said, do you think that you should cancel that? Like, you're just getting this new job. And that has always stuck with me about now to this day. I will not take work. I will push something off. I will not finish something because as my dad turned 80 last month, I realized I can't get that time back. And I don't want to always put work first anymore.
But you shouldn't have to choose either, right? Like it shouldn't have to be this thing where it's like you have to do this or you have to, you know what I mean? Like we should be able to kind of choose and prioritize in the moment. And that moment of prioritization doesn't dictate our priorities as a whole. It's just saying in the moment, this is the thing that needs my attention. And so the fact that someone made you feel like for that moment, prioritizing that was an indication of your priorities, your professional priorities, right? Like that's wild. I had a boss call me during my grandmother's funeral when I was out, and my dad, the lashing I got from my father when I got off that call about how dare I take that call. And I was just like, well, we're trying to get this renewal in and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm the only one with the context. And he goes, we just buried your grandmother. Like, shame on your boss for picking up the phone and calling you, knowing that you're out. And then shame on you for answering. And I was like, I think to this day, even still, like my parents ever told me that they were disappointed in me, that would be like the worst thing. Like, in my 40s, like if my mom or dad or my husband said, I'm disappointed in you, like literally like daggers to my heart. And like my dad looking at me and saying that he was disappointed in me, I'm like, I was so small in that moment, but I got what he was saying, right? Like, there is a time and a place, and that wasn't appropriate. It wasn't appropriate for me. It wasn't appropriate for my boss, but like my priorities were out of whack because I thought I needed to take that call. And then if I didn't, I would be signaling something to my boss.
Yep. And I think that's perfect for, as women, or anybody really, but women when it comes to being in a workforce, establish that safety net way early on if you're listening and you're 20 years old, because we have to have more of the pushback and the boundaries. And it comes from not always being the note taker. We are not the default note taker. We will not answer the phone if it's, off hours. But every time we do that and we do that behavior, we're reinforcing like that's not a boundary for us because we're too scared to buck the system, because what if we lose our job? And that mantra I think that I had was, I've already lost my job. So it did, like, there's no more rock bottom. So for all of us to have that mindset of like, am I so badass enough that I can bet on myself and tell these people boundaries? And if that means I go, then that's not the place for you as a leader. But definitely boundaries, ladies. Like we have to get better about doing it. And the more all of us do it together, the more it becomes the norm.
I love that, Celeste. And I think that is such a powerful way for us to wrap up our episode today. Thank you so much for your time.
I am
so inspired by your story. And I have so many follow-up questions. So hopefully you and I could just stay in touch, because I've really enjoyed getting to hear your story today.
Likewise.
And I feel like there's so much more value that we can continue to keep putting out there for folks. And like I always say, I love the idea of empowered women empowering women. And so this is just one way that you're helping do that by sharing your story and your advice. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that with us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with both of us on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.